Hey guys, I'm Learning TFT, back with another video where I'm going to share my learnings so that I can learn more effectively and you can learn in the process as well. In this video, I'm going to go through the best way to position every unit in set 13. I'm going to start with Scion just because I might forget about him when I go through the units. Plus, Black Rose is exceptionally strong right now in this current patch. So we'll start there. But before we actually begin, I want to kind of explain the methodology. This is using MetaTFT's team builder, and if you drag units onto the board, they'll actually show the frequency and the win rate, the round win rate of each hex on the board. And so the hexes that have like a brighter border around it are the more optimal spots to place each unit. And we're going to talk about why each unit performs better in each of those hexes. And just very briefly for newer players, in general, you want your tanks in the front line, and you want your carries in the back line, and your melee carries in usually second row or first row if they have like an edge of night or something. So let's begin with Scion. The way Scion works is once he is freed from his chains, he then can dash forward and stun a bunch of units. And he dashes forward in a line. So if, for example, the enemy carry is, let's say over here, a lot of times in the early game, opponents will just default to this positioning, which is why if you look at Scion's optimal hexes, they tend to be over here. So if, for example, Scion's here, he can dash this way if they're clumped up here, and then be able to access the enemy backline over here. The other thing is if you have 5 Black Rose, Scion will heal to full health when he's freed. So what I like to do is put Scion on the outside so he takes aggro from the enemy carry first, and then that way once he's freed, because once he drops below 65% health or from 5 casts from Black Rose units, then he's freed. So if Scion doesn't take any damage, let's say you put your Scion here and then your front line is taking damage and then your units cast 5 times, then you're kind of wasting the 5 Black Rose heal to full health. So a lot of times you want to put Scion same side as the enemy carry, both because if you have 5 Black Rose, he'll heal to full health, and because you want him to be able to get access to the backline to their carry. So you really want to make sure he's taking aggro first if you have 5 Black Rose. Sometimes you can even solo frontline the Scion just to make sure that you take advantage of the full health heal. And yeah, just make sure you're same side with your Scion. So we'll start with Amumu. One thing to note is that last set, in set 12, there were a bunch of frontline traits, tank traits that had benefits in the first X seconds of the fight. So you actually wanted to have those units on the outside of your frontline. That is not true in set 13. Watchers, Sentinels, and Bruisers all just have whatever default buffs the defensive traits get, and they aren't affected by the amount of time that enters into combat. So that is not something you really have to worry too much about. So Amumu, for the most part, like Watcher gives your tanks durability, and that's buffed when they're above 50% health. Doesn't really affect positioning too much. You just want them in the front line somewhere. Darius, the way his ability works is he spins and deals physical damage to adjacent enemies and heals. So if you are carrying a Darius, let's say you have something like a BT Titans, you actually want the enemy to wrap around the Darius. So let's say you have an enemy with something like this. You would prefer not to have like Darius. I mean, you would be able to swing and hit these two Aurelias, but you wouldn't get the value on this Aurelia. So if you have a 2-star Darius, or even let's say you rolled a 3-star Darius, then you probably want this Amumu over here so that this Aurelia can walk up and you would be able to swing and hit all of these units and get more value from Darius's ability. So that's why for Darius, if we look at his stats, looks like here and here are typically better. So here, if you're solo frontlining, this would be like kind of the really optimal placement if you have like, let's say something like this with a 3-star Darius. The problem is if he gets, if the enemy has like too much DPS in the backline and bursts him down, then you probably want a little bit more support on like this side. Like let's say they have like a 3-star Lux up here. This might just be too much aggro onto the Darius. Whereas if you put one unit here, then Darius isn't taking all the aggro, which gives him more time to heal back up. Draven is a standard backline unit. You pretty much just carry him in the corners. Usually you're gonna want Rage Blade on him. So opposite side enemy carry is usually best, unless you're playing against Maddie, because Maddie snipes the opposite corner. But let's say they have a Lux here. You don't want to be same side, because with any scaling champion with Rage Blade, you want to, you're going to be a lot stronger towards the end of a fight than at the start of a fight. So opposite side enemy carry is where you want to be. Aurelia, Sentinels gain triple the armor and magic resist. So let's say you have a bunch of Sentinels. So we're singed. And if you did play that with like, let's say some type of melee carry, I'm not saying that this would be how the comp you would play, but you would typically want your Sentinels to kind of cover the outside, and then that way your melee carry can be safe on the inside, especially if the enemy backliner is something like this. You could try to wrap around this way, but in general, you want your Sentinels to tank the majority of the damage. Lux, standard backline carry. Typically, if you're carrying her, you just put her in the corners. Her shield is to the lowest current health ally, so it doesn't actually matter where she's placed for that purpose. But if you're carrying her, you just put her in the corners where she's going to be the safest. Maddie is a sniper, and snipers deal more damage per hex that they're away from the enemy target. So corners are definitely the best, usually for snipers, though there are cases where like Leduc actually had a video on this, where if you were re-rolling Maddie, there might actually be a situation where you would want to do a setup like this, where your main tank is on the right hand side here, and let's say the enemy carry is like a Lux. If Maddie is here, then Maddie will actually fire through here, through their enemy front line. So like, let's say they are set up like this. If your Maddie is here, it's going to get blocked by the Aurelia. But if they have a bunch of units here, like if this was their default positioning, this Aurelia would have a 50-50 to walk up here or walk over here. And so you have a much higher chance of having this direct line open, or even if they're over here, what you could do is set up the inverse pattern right here and you get a direct line as well. But most of the time you just can default to the corner and opposite side the enemy carry, take out this Aurelia, and then after this Aurelia is gone, then you have a direct line to the enemy carry. So if you're playing against the Maddie, then you could just put your carry in the middle, or you ideally, if you're carrying this Lux and let's say the Zyra, you put the Zyra on the opposite side of the Maddie, and that way your Lux is not the first one to get attacked by this Maddie. Morgana, she's a visionary, so whenever she gets more mana, they gain even more mana. It doesn't really affect positioning, so for the most part, you just put anywhere in the back line. These stats are not really going to affect. This is more like end of game placement, and you're not going to be carrying a Morgana in your end game, so these stats are not going to be as reliable. Early game though, you just default backline to a corner if you're carrying her. If you're not carrying her, you just put her somewhere in the middle. And she could be a good spreader of like anti-heal, because she'll always, with her ability, she has low mana pool and will always use her ability on the nearest non-cursed enemy. Powder, if you're carrying her, you usually just put her in the corner, especially because the way her ability works is she sends a monkey towards the largest group of enemies, causing a 2 hex radius explosion. So you want to clump your front line so that the enemies clump around your front line. So like that's why if you are carrying Maddie, a stone plate can be quite good. Where's stone plate? So if you have a bunch of enemies that, let's say they have a full sentinel front line, you would ideally like it so that they kind of clump all like this, and then the Powder's monkey will go here, hit here, and then hit in a 2 hex radius will explode on all of these units. So instead, for example, if you were spreading out your front line like this, and they kind of started off something like this, then you wouldn't be able to hit these two Aurelias if the monkey hits right here. Whereas if you were positioned something like this, then these two units would like kind of walk up here and then explode somewhere in the middle and be able to hit all 4. So with Powder, you just want your enemy front line to clump. Singed is standard sentinel frontline. One thing to keep in mind for Singed is that he actually provides a lot of utility in the late game. Grants the ally who has dealt the most damage attack speed. And so you usually don't want Singed to take aggro early on in the fight, because you want to at least get one cast off from him before he dies. So like positioning him same side enemy carry is not ideal if he gets burst down before he's able to cast. So positioning him somewhere in between your other frontliners, like let's say you're playing a 6 sentinel frontline, just putting him somewhere in the middle, or if you feel like he's going to get burst down too fast, you can even put him second row, and that way you can make sure he casts. And I suspect that's why you can even see like his win rate all in this middle is pretty low, 41, 42, whereas back here has slightly higher, more consistent win rate, just because he's a little bit safer. But ideally you can kind of have him walk up in between two reliable frontliners. So if this guy gets taken out fat, let's say enemy carry is over here, and this is like an Aurelia 1, gets taken out by this Lux, even if Singed walks out, and could get taken out really fast as well. Whereas if this was a stronger tank with like items on it, then you guarantee that he'll be able to survive a little bit longer and get that cast off for your carry. The other thing with Singed, his hero augment, is he will always walk to the opposite side. So you want to position your Singed opposite side enemy carry. So let's say enemy carry is here. You put your, I think it was called Mad Chemist or Mad Scientist or something. He'll walk to opposite side backline. So usually normally you want your like melee carry same side to be able to get access quickly. But with the Singed hero augment, you want opposite side. So if the Lux is over here, you can put over here, or even here to like walks a little bit closer. And again, try to protect the Singed on both sides so he's not taking aggro right away. Steb, nothing much, pretty standard bruiser tank unit. You can see stats are pretty consistent across the board. Nothing really special there. Trundle, same kind of deal. Not much difference across the board here. If you do have his hero augment and you're carrying Trundle, then you can see that the win rate's slightly higher, second row left, second row right. Ideally, you put him behind like your main tank on same side enemy carry. So let's say enemy carries here and you have like a 3-star hero augment here. Then ideally you can take out the enemy, walk up, take this guy out, and then be able to go straight up to take out this Lux. Whereas if you're opposite side, then it's going to take you a lot longer to get to their main damage source. Vex. Vex is a rebel. Oh, one thing I didn't mention for Aurelia. Rebels gain 12% max HP after your team loses 30% of their health. A smoke signal appears, granting rebels 60% attack speed for 4 seconds and extra power for the rest of combat. So rebels, you actually want to have your team lose 30% of their HP earlier. So rebels is actually a situation where you might actually prefer, if let's say Aurelia is your main tank, usually you want to protect your weaker units and put your main tank on the outside. But rebels might actually be one instance where you don't mind if some of these weaker units take more damage early so that the smoke signal for the rebels can appear and you can get more power earlier. So that's one thing to keep in mind there. And then as far as Vex goes, you can see that the middle 3 hexes are more optimal from a win percentage standpoint. And the reason for that, excuse me, I'm still recovering from a sickness, so my throat is kind of sore and I gotta keep sipping water. But Vex, you see the last part of his spell. There's Vex a girl. I keep on messing up the gender. Okay, I should just say they. After a brief delay, they deal magic damage to enemies still in the zone. And the zone is a 1 hex radius. So let's say you have Aurelias like this. If you have your Vex in the corner here, they'll target this outside Aurelia, create a 1 hex zone, and then deal damage to everything in this zone. Whereas if you have your Vex in the middle, it'll create the zone here. So that's why you'll see that Typically the middle hexes will be more optimal to place Vex if you're carrying them in the early game. Of course, this depends on enemy positioning. Let's say they're positioned like this, then this would actually be more optimal. Or even if they're positioned like this, then here would be the most optimal. But if you want to play lazy, center is kind of just really easy default for Vex in the early game if you're carrying them. All right, Violet. Violet, if you're carrying her, she is your standard kind of melee carry. So usually you want to be able to go same side as the enemy carry and wrap onto them. So if you have like an Edge of Night, you can, with some healing. Where's Hodge? Okay, I'll just throw BT on. You want to be same side so that you can get through the enemy carry or enemy tank and then be able to walk up and go to their backline. Here is if you have an Edge of Night, then it can drop aggro. So that way, if you have your main tank, where's Vander? Here, then drop aggro, then the Lux will start attacking the Vander, and then you can walk up. If you don't have an Edge of Night, and you feel like the enemy carry can burst down your Violet before you can get through here to walk up, then you can start second row. And that's why 54% here is much higher. And so usually you put your Vi here or here with your frontliner kind of protecting there. So like this. Zyra sends vines toward the current target, stunning them. Then smaller vines seek out two nearest enemies, dealing magic damage to them. So in the late game, if you happen to be playing a Zyra, let's say with a vertical experiment board, because she has that stun, being able to stun your enemy main tank is actually quite useful so that they can't drain tank and shield back up or gain more HP. So putting Zyra in front of the enemy tank can be quite useful. The enemy main tank who's itemized, that is. So let's say it's like Garen's here, then you just put straight ahead. If you're carrying Zyra, then you usually just put her in the corner, keep her the safest. And yeah, that's pretty straightforward. All right, Akali. Akali is pretty standard AP melee unit. So similar logic to Violet. You can see that from a win percentage standpoint, second row side has the highest win percentages, and you just put her same side, or if Lux is here, same side with your main carry or your main tank in front here. So let's say you're tanking an Alawi. So that way your Alawi takes the most of the damage from the enemy carry. So hopefully you have enough. Basically the idea is that if you have more DPS to be able to take down their Aurelia before their Lux can take down your Alawi, and hopefully be able to go up here, then you win the fight. If they can take out your Lux, your main tank, before you take out the Akali, and then they can burst down your Akali, then you lose the fight. So with this type of board, you want to make sure you have high DPS and high main tank here. Camille, same kind of thing. You can, if you have Edge of Night, then you can do corner here, same side enemy carry. She actually has slightly higher win rates in the front here compared to second row. And I suspect a big part of that is because her ability heals 40% of damage dealt. So she has more built-in healing than some of the other melee carries, which means that she just has more sustainability. And so getting her into the fight faster in the front line instead of having to walk up is slightly better. Leona, standard tank, nothing too special to write home about. Nocturne has a ability that hits adjacent enemies to bleed. So it's kind of similar to Darius, where you want enemy to like kind of wrap around Nocturne. But you also want to keep Nocturne safe, so it's kind of a trade-off. And you can see that there's not too much difference across these stats here. There's kind of like, there's a slight benefit for slightly more middle here than complete side, just because if he walks up here and there's 2 units here, then he'll get more value, or even like here. So you want to be able to protect your Nocturne by having 2 kind of frontliners protect his flanks so that he can attack everything around here. Rel does lance enemies in a line and steal armor and magic resist from them. So that's why you can see that the outside is actually the best place to place Rel. So that way, especially against Sentinels, let's say, since Sentinels have a lot of armor and magic resist, so stealing their armor and MR might actually be more valuable than against other frontliners. I actually don't know how long the lance is, but this gives you more of a better angle to be able to steal more armor and MR, whereas if you're in the middle and they're kind of spread out, then you might only get 1 unit as opposed to multiple units. And this is especially good with the artifact Light Shield. If you're playing 6 Sentinel Rel, Light Shield will shield with 70% of the holder's combined armor magic resist. And if she steals a bunch of armor and MR, then she starts like shielding a massive amount. If you have a 3-star Rel with this setup on the side, I think she has something like a 20 to 25% win rate with this Light Shield crest. So it's extremely strong. Renata Glass fires a pair of missiles. Allies they pass through get a shield and deals damage to target and adjacent enemies. Usually you're not carrying Renata. She's more of a support unit. And she does hit adjacent units, so similar to Vex, where you wanted them kind of like more so in the middle. Renata Glass is kind of same thing. You can see corners are not as good. Middle is usually better. Ideally, you are putting her behind your main tank. So let's say you have a Garen or something. Usually you're not tanking Garen with Renata, but you put her behind your main tank so that they get extra shield. So you basically get more value, especially if they have strong resistances, like let's say it's a Sentinel, then that extra shield benefits from the resistance value. Plus, when Renata's more in the middle, she also deals more damage to adjacent enemies. So similarly, when you hit this, then you also hit these 2 adjacent. Whereas if you're on the side and hit this, you only hit this one other Aurelia, not this one over here. Set will pull in enemy on either side and slam them together, stunning them. If only one enemy is grabbed, the damage and stun duration are increased by 50%. So if you want more single target, or you want to really increase the stun on a specific enemy that's like on the side, then you can put, like let's say they're solo frontlining a Alawi over here, then you could put Set on the side, and you're pretty confident that he's not going to hit multiple, then it'll stun their main tank longer. Whereas if you have here, it won't stun their main tank as long. So that could be a little bit more valuable so that Alawi can't cast again and be able to get more durability. Otherwise, you can just stick him in the center. But the stats seem to indicate that on the side and getting this only one enemy grabbed is more valuable, since you're not really relying on him dealing more damage. That damage in the late game is probably pretty negligible. Whereas the stun duration increase is probably more valuable. So similar to Rel, being set on the side to flank and hit just one unit is going to be slightly stronger. And that may be why this has a slightly, I mean, it's only 0.1% diff over that side, but that could explain that. Tristana, standard carry. If you are carrying her, you probably just put her corner. Nothing too unique about her kit to write home about. Urgot, we didn't really talk about experiment, but you pretty much are just, if you're carrying Urgot, there is a 3-star reroll version that you just kind of solo frontline, and if you get him to 3-star and set to 3-star, you are rolling for the hunger for power, I believe, anomaly, and then it's something like this is the build, and then you eat the set. Then you can kind of just solo frontline him. Ideally, you can put him onto the experiment hex wherever that is. And yeah, with experiment units, you just don't have that much flexibility on where the experiment hexes are. He is a 2 range, so typically if you are carrying him, second row is going to be better. His experiment bonus does dash on combat start. So you could, if you wanted to, you could put him in the backline experiment hex, which is why it seems like this 52% here is actually not bad if you are carrying him. But right now, Urgot's not that strong of a unit. But standard 2 range melee, you do want him to get kind of in closer in the fight because he hits adjacent enemies and sunders. So the other thing is, if you're playing Urgot from a pure utility standpoint and you're primary carrying Twitch and you don't have Sunder, Armor Shred, then you want Urgot same side as your Twitch because his ability does do a 20% Sunder on all enemies hit for 6 seconds. Vander, when Vander casts, he gets a ton of armor and magic resist. So usually he's great at solo tanking, and usually you're going to play him with Violet reroll right now. So you just put him same side in front of your main carry. Vladimir, if you have his hero augment, then he'll just go in the backline corner. Otherwise, just pretty standard frontline. Nothing too special. Zeri, sniper, gonna go in the corner. Ziggs, if you're carrying him, will go in a corner. And his 3 mini bombs are to random enemies, so it doesn't really affect where he is. 3 costs. So Blitz, let's see, gains a shield, shock the nearest 3 enemies, and reduce their damage by 10% for 4 seconds. So if the enemy does have a melee carry, let's say they have a Violet 4-star or 3-star, then you probably want your Blitzcrank same side. Hopefully he can cast once. So if you're not sure if this Violet will just take him out before he casts, then put some other frontliner to kind of protect him. But that decrease in damage by 10% could actually make a big deal. So same side enemy melee carry is ideal. From a pure stat standpoint, it seems like not too much difference across the board. Slightly better on the sides. And that might also indicate that kind of the damage or reducing enemy damage by 10% is not as effective here because enemy melee units are typically on the sides. So that's why you can see the stats kind of increase as you move towards the sides. Cassiopeia blast target for magic damage. Every third cast splash to 2 enemies within 3 hexes. If you're carrying Cassiopeia, corner is usually best. Same side enemy carry can work well because it could splash, could basically give her backline access if you hit this target and then this is within 3 hexes. If they don't have any other units nearby, then Zyra is the closest, then she could splash onto this Zyra. Ezreal fires a shot towards current target, all enemies within 1 hex. So similar to Vex, center is usually going to be better, and you want to be able to splash onto all of the enemy frontline. I'm going to try to go a little faster because this video is taking a little bit longer than I would expect. Gangplank can be frontline or backline. You can see that his frontline value is less strong than backline, so usually you're going to use him as a backliner, at least for now. And if you're carrying him, then corners are going to be best. He also hits enemies in a line, so if you can somehow get the enemies lined up, that'd be preferred. Kog'Maw, standard sniper, corners are going to be best. He likes Rage Blade, so you want opposite side enemy carry. So like this or like this. Loris, pretty standard. He gets a shield and redirects 50% damage taken by adjacent allies. So he actually works pretty well having tanks around him. So if you have something like this, actually works pretty well to have like a redemption on him and let's say tank item. That way these two walk up. He takes damage first, can proc his ability, and then start reducing the damage of adjacent allies. Nami, pretty standard, bounces 3 times to enemies within 3 hexes. Will usually go on the corner if you're 3-starring her, and you could go same side enemy carry if you can hope that you can bounce onto that enemy backliner, similar to Cassiopeia. Nunu creates a 2 hex cloud of fumes that deals magic damage. So I would expect that if his value was in the damage, that the center would be better, but this indicates that that magic damage is probably not that powerful. But if at some point Nunu 3 carry was actually viable, then you would expect middle would be better. Rennie can stun the enemy tank, slam them down, deal damage to adjacent enemies. So Rennie you want to put right in front of the enemy main tank. So let's say it's Garen. Then you want him to be able to stun here. So you can move your Rennie wherever the enemy main tank is. That just stuns them so that they can't cast their ability and gain more shield, gain more whatever, heal, so that your carry has more time to be able to take them down. Scar stuns the nearest 3 enemies. So similar, you want to put him in front of enemy main tank. If they're kind of spread out, then there's actually value in putting same side enemy carry, because his Firelight will dash, and let's say he dashes over here, then he can also stun the Lux. So that's why the outside here has a higher win percentage than center. So Scar, you want to put same side enemy carry and enemy tank. Smeech with his ability will leap towards the enemy with the fewest items within 4 hexes. In general, you want to do same side enemy carry, hoping that you can jump onto that unit. So outside will be better. If you're afraid Smeech is going to take aggro, then second row behind your main tank is better. Ideally, you have Edge of Night on Smeech, then you can be able to put him on the outside here. Swain can go frontline or backline. If you are putting Swain frontline, it's pretty consistent across the board. If you're carrying Swain backline in the mid game, then you can just put corners. Twisted Fate, if you're carrying, he does have a yellow card but it throws cards at different targets, so it's kind of random. So I don't think there's necessarily any better place for where TF. If you're carrying TF, you probably just go corners. Mbessa, chains get +1 range, and then fists does not have more range, but can briefly stun the target and dash away. So you can see that here have the highest in the front row. And I believe because she kind of dashes away, you don't need to put her second row, because even if she takes aggro, she'll dash away when she switches to chains. So she'll drop aggro if the enemy is attacking her. And you probably want her same side enemy carry, but protected by like your tanks. So she's not taking too much aggro from enemy carry. Corki, if Corki's your main carry, you probably just place him in the corners, though he does strafe around and split missiles and reduce their armor. So if you are not main tanking Corki or main carrying Corki, then you could just put him same side as your main damage dealer. Like, let's say I don't know that you would ever do this, but if Jinx were your main carry, then you could put next to reduce armor. Dr. Mundo, if you ever get a bruiser emblem, is really strong, and you just put on your experiment hex. He does deal magic damage to all enemies within 2 hexes, so that indicates that usually middle will be better. So you can see these 3 hexes are typically the best for him. Echo will dash with Firelight and reduce magic resist. So you want to put Echo same side enemy tank, main tank, to try to reduce their magic resist if you have a backline carry. But if you're primary carrying, then it seems to indicate that actually just center is really good for him, has the highest win rate. Yeah, it just, I guess, increases his effectiveness on reducing targets' magic resist. Elise, frontline has a jump. It's kind of similar to Tom Kench from last set. Jumps in and then stuns a bunch of units. So middle here is all good. Ideally, your same side enemy carry, so that you can jump in and then stun everything here. If you're backline, then usually if you're carrying her, you just put her in the corner. Garen, his emissary ability shields his adjacent allies for 20% of his HP. So ideally you want to put like Warmogs on him. And then you can get like just more shielding on the units next to him. So you want to place him in the middle between two of your other tanks, which is why center is usually the best for him. It's also why Find Your Center, the augment, is quite perfect for Garen. Heimer, corner. He's a scaling champion since he gets an additional missile every time he casts. So you want, similar to, you know, Rage Blade units, you just want to put him opposite side enemy carry usually to be able to scale more. If you think you have more damage than the enemy and you can get through their frontliner faster than they can get through yours, then you can put same side to try to take down their carry. Alawi gains durability and drains HP from nearest enemies, then slams down, dealing magic damage to all enemies within 2 hexes. Usually tanks, their damage is kind of not too big of a deal. But the durability makes a big difference. From a tank standpoint, usually just middle is good for Alawi. They're going to usually be your main tank. Silco gets more AP from Dominator every time he casts. So he's also a scaling. Dominators are basically scaling champions as well. So corners and opposite side enemy carry. Of course, he does actually releases a bunch of monstrosities that if you take out the enemy tank first, then you might be able to get those monstrosities to go here and then here. So it kind of depends if you think you have more DPS to get through their tank than they do with your tank. Otherwise, opposite side is always pretty safe. Twitch, you usually don't have that much option when you're playing Twitch since you want to put Twitch on the experiment hex. He's also a sniper, so you do want to make sure he's in the corner to get most value on that sniper. And pretty much he's always going here, here, or sometimes the experiment hex is here. But with 5 experiment, you always get guaranteed a corner, I believe. So yeah, not too much options on where you position Twitch. Vi is a melee carry, pretty consistent across the board. If you are carrying her, you can also go second row, same side enemy carry. Zoe, standard AP, backliner, corners. She also has it bounce to the furthest enemy within 4 hexes, so she can actually go same side enemy carry. Since if she hits here or here, might be able to bounce over to the backline. So Zoe, same side enemy carry, especially if they're a scaling carry like Heimer or like a Rage Blade unit, same side works well. All right, finally 5 costs. Caitlyn's a sniper, so corner to get more value. Her ability is an airship that drops randomly, so where she is doesn't really matter. So opposite side enemy carry is usually best since that will increase the damage of her bombs. Jace can go frontline or backline, and if he's frontline, then the Hextech Forge will shield your frontliners. So, and it will actually respawn with HP on a Jace cast. So you want to put this Hextech Forge on the outside to take damage from the enemy carry first. So this dies, and then Jace can cast, and it'll come back and give you more HP. You also want to put this near like your primary tank so that they get more shield from this when Jace casts. If you have Jace backline, it gives attack speed. So you want to put this close to your primary carry. One thing I saw, if you are playing against a Smeech will leap towards the enemy with the fewest items within 4 hexes. You can actually put this opposite side here, And then if the speech walks up here, it will actually target the Hextech Forge first. So in this case, you can use Hextech Forge opposite side of your main carry to just bait the Smeech away. And then Jace will cast. Smeech kills this. Jace casts, this comes back. Smeech went somewhere else, and then we'll jump back here. So Jace with Hextech Forge is just really strong. And actually, you could probably just frontline this and move this to the back. It's pretty a strong counter to Smeech. All right, Jinx, pretty much standard carry. You want to corner her. Deals damage in a line with zap and stuns them. So could be valuable. Same side enemy tank to be able to stun them. And then the Death Rocket hits the whole board. So where she's positioned on that doesn't really matter. But you just put her corners to be safest. LeBlanc has a lot of utility in that she chains enemies together and can kind of pull them towards the center of the board. So she can pull backline carries forward. So if you position her same side enemy carry, that's usually pretty good. And center of the board seems to be pretty good too, since you kind of pull everything towards the middle. Especially if you have like a Malzahar that deals damage to units in a line, then you pull everything towards the middle, they're clumped, and then Malzahar can kind of deal more damage, AoE damage to them. Malzahar summons a gate in a 5 hex line, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hits across in a line. So Malz will usually do better in the middle here rather than in this corner, because that way he gets more area to do the 5 unit line. So yeah, these 3 will usually be better. And ideally you want to try to get the enemy units to stay in a line like that. So put all your front line in the middle so it maximizes the surface area of the enemies in a line. Mordekaiser is a AP melee unit, and when he does cast, gets +1 range, but pretty standard. You want to keep him safe, so he does have higher win percentage out here on the outside, but I would only do that if you have an Edge of Night, because if he's taking aggro from the main enemy carry, he could die pretty quickly. So you want Edge of Night and like some type of healing. Hodge will usually be better because he benefits from the AP. But if you don't have that Edge of Night, then you can, put some tanks around him to keep him a little safer. Rumble does have burn. So if you don't have anti-heal on your team, then you want to put him in front of the enemy carry so that you can get that burn onto their enemy carry. And depending on his upgrades, he has some upgrades that like does AoE or can hit the farthest unit in 4 hexes. So depending on what upgrades you have in place would affect how you want to position him. He also calls down rain of missiles that targets units in a row. So similar to Malzahar, you kind of can benefit from that if you have all of your front line lined up here so that their front line will go in a line. And it seems to be that he performs a little bit better on the outside, but it seems kind of marginal. All right, lastly we have Savika. So Savika will cast 3 different spells. Her flamethrower hits in a line, I believe. So slightly on the outside here, especially if, let's say, their units are like that, then you can walk up and then do flamethrower in a line here, can deal a lot of damage. But otherwise, it seems like from a stats standpoint, it seems like stats show here is slightly better here. She is a melee carry, so if she doesn't have much survivability, like this. Like Edge of Night you can put outside. Otherwise, if you just have like a BT Titans, then you could go second row here. This has the highest win rate, or you can go here with your main tank, you know, something like this. All right, that covers all of the units in set 13. I hope you found this video helpful. If I missed anything or got something wrong or missed like some edge case, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I know there are a lot of hero augments that might change the positioning of how some units are placed. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.